Welcome in. We are now day 13 or 14 of Operation Epic Fury, depending on when you watch this. I am still on the road, wrapping up my trip, sitting here in Paris. Now, we have a lot to dive into today. The first, an update for the KC-135 mishap. Unfortunately, CENTCOM has released and confirmed that all 6 crew members involved in that mishap have perished. Now, the other KC-135 images appeared later on after yesterday's video showing it landing in Israel. So the Air Force is going to go through a safety investigation process and then an accident investigation process. The accident investigation process is something that will be publicly released, most likely, and we won't hear about it for quite some time. Our thoughts and prayers go out with those involved, the loved ones. Again, people are getting some of the worst news of their lives as this is going on. So again, thoughts and prayers with them. But I want to jump into today's update. And again, we have a lot of ground to cover. The first was a press briefing by Secretary Hegseth and General Caine this morning, talking about the ongoing operations. Day 13 was the heaviest strike day of the entire campaign. This is a trend. Every day seems to be more and more intense. They said that 3 separate times in this briefing. Over 6,000 targets have been struck, and now that's probably 2 days old, with an average of about 1,000 targets per day. Now, they noted that only 1% of the munitions used today are standoff weapons. That means the rest are all overhead, over top. That is definitely a significant shift from how this campaign started and what you would expect as you gain air superiority. General Caine also talked about ATACMS specifically in this briefing, the Army Tactical Missile System being used to sink Iranian ships and even an Iranian submarine, which I definitely don't think is getting enough coverage. So we're going to dive into that today, as well as some updates with B-1s, B-52s, B-2s, all conducting strikes and some of their capabilities. With the strike tempo, the kill chain that's been built utilizing artificial intelligence. And then we definitely need to look at the Strait of Hormuz and just how that is unraveling, and the uncertainty that is surrounding that critical passageway where nearly 20% of the world's oil flows into and out of every day, at least on a normal day. So let's start with what General Caine highlighted about ATACMS, because I don't think this is getting nearly enough coverage.
13 days of this operation, our artillery forces have made history. They fired the first precision strike missiles ever used in combat, reaching deep into enemy territory. They've used Army ATACMS to sink multiple ships, including a submarine, and they've done all of this with the precision and determination that comes from relentless training and trust.
Now, the ATACMS stands for Army Tactical Missile System. It's a short-range supersonic tactical ballistic missile. It can be fired from the HIMARS, which is a high-mobility artillery rocket system. This is a tracked vehicle, so think that you put the ATACMS pod, which has 1 rocket in it. However, it does have some deception built in because the lid has a pattern of 6 containers so that the enemy can't discern whether it is the multiple launch rocket system or if it is this ATACMS. Now, this is a massive piece of ordnance, 13 feet tall, weighing nearly 4,000 pounds, 3,690 pounds to be specific, or for everyone else in the world, 1,670 kilograms, with a range of 190 nautical miles or 300 kilometers. And then it does have different types of warheads, one that carries bomblets, one that has just a high explosive blast penetrating. So again, this thing can do quite a bit with a top ceiling of 160,000 feet. Now, General Caine does go into the briefing talking about the crew. He and Secretary Hegseth were able to talk to some of these Army crew members who are running these ATACMS and HIMARS systems. General Caine confirmed that the ATACMS have been utilized to sink multiple Iranian ships and, in fact, sink an Iranian submarine. Now, normally you think of this being utilized for ground forces via ground forces, not ground forces versus a naval target, but obviously they figured out a way to do this. Now, the ATACMS is not able to be manipulated or moved once it's launched, meaning it's going GPS guided to wherever that point in space it was given to go hit. So most likely these ships obviously were moored, they were not moving when they were hit. But nonetheless, it does give the Army, it's another weapon that the United States has and is obviously utilized to take out the Iranian Navy. We'll talk about the Strait of Hormuz being opened here in a little bit, but this might be a capability that when we see from UAVs flying overhead, collecting points where maybe they're dropping in or launching drones, that you start seeing HIMARS and ATACMS being utilized against these type targets. General Caine also did say that the precision strike missile was the first time it's been utilized. And this appears to be a follow-on to the ATACMS. We don't have a whole lot of details about it yet, but nonetheless, this conflict was the first time it's been utilized as well. So that's the ground side of it. Let's talk about the air side, because again, they're saying this is going to be the most intense day of strikes yet. Now, what I would anticipate we're going to see today or have seen is heavy usage of bombers. And in fact, we do have some images and videos from plane spotters seeing more B-52s arrive in England, some B-1s and B-52s arriving back from the Middle East area of operations. Again, plane spotters are tracking these all real time, which is wild. But since it's been said that only 1% of the strikes today are going to be using those standoff munitions like cruise missiles, I would anticipate that bombers are playing a heavy role in this in order to bring that sheer volume of ordnance and strikes into it. We've talked about the B-2 and that GBU-57, the massive ordnance penetrator, the 30,000-pound bomb, which is able to carry 2. But let's not forget, it also can carry a lot of smart 500-pound bombs, upwards of 80 of these. You mix in a B-52, which can carry 84 500-pound bombs internally and more on external pylons. That'd be pretty wild to see. And the B-1 Lancer, capable of carrying 16 500-pound JDAMs. Again, this is smart bombs per weapons bay. They have 3 of them, so 48 500-pound bombs per B-1. You have a lot of firepower when it comes to this. If that's how it's playing out, again, I would expect to see these bombers being escorted by 4th and 5th generation fighters. You would have F-22s conducting air superiority, making sure that there are no air threats out there, which at this point, I don't think that's even the case. But they also going to help out with some suppression of enemy air defenses and other things like that. We have seen F-16 Wild Weasels, the Block 50s, taking off alongside Strike Eagles. Those Wild Weasels can do air-to-air, as well as they can suppress enemy air defenses. So if there are any mobile SAMs or surface-to-air missile radar systems that turn on, expect that those F-16s will be carrying the high-speed anti-radiation missile, the AGM-88, attacking enemy radar sites, suppressing, destroying those surface-to-air missile systems. We also have the F-35, which again can do a lot of that. It will help out with the seed roll. It will also help out with the air-to-air roll, and potentially dropping ordnance in areas where maybe it is still a little bit contested and you need that low observability to get in and out there. The Raptor can do that as well. So again, all these platforms have various tools. Some are better in other areas than their counterparts. And that's why you're always kind of putting the puzzle pieces together depending on what the objective and what the threat laydown is. And again, I don't want to neglect the Navy. They'll be a part of this too, with F-18 Super Hornets in the mix, as well as their F-35s. So expect to see all of those working in sync, doing these deliberate strikes inside Iran. Now, when we talk about the sheer volume of these target sets, I mean, this is unprecedented. When we talk about over 1,000 strikes a day, upwards of 10,000 strikes thus far, creating these target sets, validating these target sets is incredibly complex and definitely takes a lot of manpower, computing power, etc. And that's where AI has come into the mix here. We're learning a little bit more about it. Now, it's being reported that the U.S. military used Anthropic's Claude AI embedded inside Palantir's Maven smart system to help strike over 1,000 targets in Iran in the first 24 hours of Operation Epic Fury. They utilized Claude to generate attack options, routes, and target priorities that human commanders could review before authorizing strikes, basically taking away what used to be 8 or 9 different systems and fusing that all together so that commanders can see it in one place. Now, again, just talking about the sheer volume of this, I mean, this is a big challenge to go through all this data and figure it out. And when I hear 8 to 9 systems that commanders were having to use, being able to streamline this into one has to be a significant force enabler when it comes to this. Just imagine having to log on to all these different systems. Like, I get annoyed having to jump between different browsers or tabs, let alone going between different systems that might be at different security levels and literally on different networks themselves with different logins. You can see that it quickly adds time and the potential for even more errors. So very interesting how AI has been leveraged in this conflict. And clearly it is a point of discussion because it's been in the news with the Pentagon kicking out Anthropic and going with OpenAI and back and forth. But nonetheless, I think we're getting a glimpse into what the future of warfare is going to be looking like. So that's what the U.S. is using to fight this war thus far. But let's pivot to Iran and see what they are doing. Now, we've had multiple vessels now struck in the Strait of Hormuz. At least 6 seafarers have been killed. And AIS data is showing that there has been a drop of about 80 to 90% of sea traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which again is significant because remember, 20% of the world's oil moves through here each and every day. Now, both Secretary Hegseth and General Caine said this.
The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting at shipping. It is open for transit should Iran not do that.
Now, this is not new, and I think it's to be expected. Iran has had the ability to threaten to close the Strait of Hormuz. However, now with the ability with unmanned surface vessels as well as one-way attack drones, it has just amped up their capability in being able to threaten it. The analogy I give is, the U.S., the Gulf states, they have to bat 1,000, if you like baseball references, when it comes to protecting ships in the Strait of Hormuz. All Iran has to do is just hit a foul ball. And they're hitting singles and doubles, it appears like, in the Strait of Hormuz. So while, yes, I do agree with their statement, Iran is the only one keeping the strait closed right now, it's now our problem, I think. We've kicked the hornet's nest, so we have to figure out a way to open the Strait of Hormuz back up. Whether that be to just completely crumble the Iranian regime, somehow completely decimate any ability for the Iranian regime or remnants of that to threaten any vessels inside the Strait of Hormuz. This is a big problem set that I think we're going to continue to see play out for weeks, if not months, if not years, depending on how this thing all shakes out. For Iran, this is real leverage. They can be the thorn in the world's side when it comes to the strait. And with that, there are now reports, and Secretary Hegseth did confirm that the new Ayatollah Khamenei, he is in a coma.
Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement. He called for unity. Apparently killing tens of thousands of protesters is his kind of unity.
So apparently he suffered injuries from one of the airstrikes early in the week and has lost a leg, has been in a coma. We talked about it yesterday. If there was anyone who would be more hardened and battled, it would probably be this guy who's had most of his family killed and now been appointed into power. So we'll see how this plays out. But again, their regime is clearly on their back foot and they're swinging for the fences, throwing everything they got. And it's going to create a lot of problem sets that, again, you just can't shut it off overnight, I don't think. But I'd be curious to hear your opinions, and I will see you next time.